That is what we call an open and standing appropriation for the legislature. That means that when you vote on this bill, you will be voting for the debt service that will pay for the state office building. And what this provision means is that the legislature, if this passes and gets signed into law, will never again have to vote for its own appropriation. I'm pausing just to let that sink into you. This is a big deal. This provision right here is a big deal. It's what's called an open and standing appropriation for the legislature. The reason I supported this in the past was because this is also one way to solve the standoff we had with the governor where he line item vetoed the legislature's funding. So this would create a little more separation of powers. But if you're going to build a $500 million office building, this is the sort of provision that you use to hide covering the debt service on that building. If you're looking in the repealers in this bill, there's also a repealer that would repeal the requirement for the parking for senators to cover the debt service on the parking ramp they built underneath their building. I'm sure over the years you've heard them grimace about how much they pay for parking, and then eventually the Senate decided to subsidize their parking. In this bill, we're repealing the requirement for the Senate parking to be paid for out of the parking fund, and now it will be paid for out of the general fund. So, I mean, self-serve, self-serve, self-serve. That's the theme of this bill. If you vote on this bill, you will be voting to fund the debt service payments for a $500 million state office building, period. It's in here. Starts on page 25, line 25. And not only that, it'll fund any other thing that the majority party in the legislature wants to fund. And it won't require a vote by the legislature at all, ever again. That's what this provision does. Is this amendment germane to this bill? Absolutely. It's germane all over the place. But if you don't want to vote on it, you can pretend like it's not. You have the votes. You can say it's not germane. But when you take the vote to call this not germane, you're taking the vote. That is the vote to fund the state office building. And it's in here. You already, I disagree with Representative Robbins. You already voted on it once. You've already voted to fund the state office building once. Every member did in the original language. And you're voting to fund the debt service in this bill. But I just want everybody to be really clear, if you haven't read the exact bill, that's what this provision does. Section 7 of this bill, page 25, line 25, that's the language that will cover the debt service to pay for the $500 million state office building. $500 million. More than 5 times what they spent on the Senate office building. I hope you've got a provision that we don't have to pay for the parking like the Senate doesn't have to. That's in the repealers if you're looking for it. This is absolutely germane, and you can't hide from it. You can't pretend like if we call something out of order, we're not going to really have to vote on it. I've gotten really good over the years at looking for the fine print, and it's right here. It's the open and standing appropriation that will let you spend whatever state dollars you want to on anything you want moving forward with no vote of the legislature. That's what this language says. So just so all members know, an open and standing appropriation is in this bill, and it will absolutely pay for the $500 million state office building. That's what it's here for. So you want to call her out of order? Do that. That's fine. You vote for this bill, you'll be voting to fund the state office building. That's what this language does. Just so everybody's clear on that. Page 25, line 25. And not just the state office building, but any other thing that your leadership could dream that they want to pay for. That's what this language pays for. Anything with no vote of the legislature ever needed again in the future, ever. It'll pay for anything you want with no vote of the legislature ever. That's what an open and standing appropriation does. Read the language.